Dr. Ken Landau, thanks for watching. Let's talk about Kratom, also pronounced Kratom. This is a plant-based material, also referred to as mambog, supposed to have phenomenal medicinal properties, supposed to work to treat anxiety or to treat pain or to treat depression, to reduce your appetite, to cut down on inflammation. And it's said to do all of this by working on some of the neurochemistry in the brain to alter the serotonin and the dopamine and the noradrenaline transmission. About half of the people use it to treat pain, about 15% use it to treat anxiety, about 10% use it for withdrawal from opioids. Been used in Southeast Asia for several hundred years. It's a traditional medicine. People chew the fresh leaves or they drink tea that's brewed from the leaves, kind of like the natives in Peru and the Andes use cocaine, the coca plant. It's also used to reduce fever and for a variety of non-specific ailments, diarrhea and cough and high blood pressure and anxiety, and help heal wounds. It's used as an analgesic, a painkiller, local anesthetic used to help people withdraw from opium or even to use as a substitute for opium. It's used to treat diabetes, help with certain kind of cancer, especially leukemia, but you have to be a little bit suspicious when a single agent's promoted for an endless array of different conditions and diseases. Well, the use has grown in popularity because of the unsubstantiated claims about the purported benefits of the medicine, claims that it helps with opioid withdrawal, opioid addiction. It's supposed to be less risky in overdose than the opioids. It's possibly used as a replacement for methadone, supposed to boost your metabolism, enhance your libido, supposed to improve your immune system. It's supposed to improve the nerve damage after a stroke and treat certain conditions like leukemia by causing cell arrest, cell cycle arrest, prevent the cell division. It's supposed to enhance your mood. It's supposed to increase your sociability without the hangover of alcohol. Supposed to relieve headaches and minimize pain from arthritis or musculoskeletal pain or pain from peripheral arterial disease, poor circulation, and of course to treat anxiety and depression and panic attacks and insomnia. And people use it for recreational purposes for the euphoric effects of the drug and as a pain reliever. There's a metabolite of the main ingredient, and it's known as 7-hydroxy-mitragynine. And this is supposed to have analgesic properties in a mouse that's superior to morphine. And it's supposed to have antidepressant effects because it can reduce the cortisone in a mouse. Now, Kratom is from the evergreen tree in the coffee family. Mitragynine speciosa is actually the name of it. And it was named because the leaf resembles a bishop's mitre. The plant naturally grows in Thailand and Malaysia and Indonesia and Papua New Guinea and in the Philippines. The tree grows to about 40 to 80 feet, about 3 feet in diameter, has dark green and glossy leaves that are up to 4 by 8 inches. The tree was first formally described in 1839 by a Dutch colonial biologist, then had several name changes until the current name was given in 1859. The main ingredient of the leaves, well, somewhere between 25 and 40 different alkaloids. Alkaloids are nitrogen-containing compounds. Mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine are the two major structures, but there's mitraphyllene and speciogynin and a variety of flavonoids and polyphenols and saponins and glycosides, all sorts of different kinds of chemicals, and even chemicals that are known as non-alkaloids without the nitrogen. The mitragynine was first isolated in 1921. The chemical structure was laid out in 1964, the 7-hydroxymitragynine, that was identified only in 1993. Substances are insoluble in water, but soluble in organic solvents like acetone. Mitragynine makes up about 6% of the dried plant material, but about 66% of the crude base from Thailand, but only about 12% from Malaysia. Structure is somewhat similar to yohimbine. That's been used relatively unsuccessfully for treating erectile dysfunction. The 7-hydroxymitragynine is even more potent as a painkiller than the mitragynine itself, but it's only present in about 4/100ths of 1%, so there's not very much of it. Since it's a product of nature, you have to expect variation depending on the age of the tree, the season of the growth, the location where it's grown, the local growing conditions, the weather, the rain, the soil, the amount of drying, and how the plant is processed, or how the tree is processed, how the leaves are processed, and how the material is extracted from the leaves. Well, it's available in pill form or capsule form or extract form. You can add it to food, you can chew it, you can smoke the leaves, you can brew it as a tea, but you should add some lemon in order to extract the alkaloid from the leaf. And then you should probably put a little sweetener in, maybe some honey or some sugar, because it has a bitter taste and you want to mask that. At a low dose, maybe between 1 and 5 grams of the raw leaves, it acts mostly as a stimulant, gives you some energy. It's akin to the coca plant, as I mentioned in Peru. Contracts your pupils, causes blushing in some people, and the side effects are related to the stimulant activity, so it causes anxiety or an agitation. Moderate dose, 5 to 10 grams of the raw leaves. It decreases pain, causes some euphoria, has an opium-like effect, makes people sleepy or constipated or dizzy, have a dry mouth, and some people perspire or itch or have increased urination. And at a higher dose, say more than 10 or 15 grams of the leaves, has opium-like effect. Say these effects seem to be stronger with increasing doses, and in animals at least, it appears to be more potent than morphine. But at a higher dose, you have more of a potential for side effects, some tremors, some weight loss, some seizures. The overall side effects of this kratom, well, that includes nausea and vomiting and constipation and dizziness and sometimes itchiness and sweating and a dry mouth and a runny nose and some chills and urinary retention, loss of appetite and weight loss, sometimes some liver problems that can manifest as jaundice, darkening or yellowing of the skin and darkening of the urine. Then some people go on at a little higher dose to develop some insomnia and agitation, racing heart, some arrhythmias, confusion, impair your memory. And then some people have emotional changes and jerky movements and irritability and aggression and muscle aches and hallucinations or delusions and depression, seizures, respiratory arrest, or even cardiac arrest. And an interesting side effect is darkening of the skin. It seems to stimulate the pigment cells, the melanocytes in the skin, to produce pigment, especially when exposed to the sun. So there's darkening of the cheeks. Studies show in dogs that there doesn't seem to be any toxicity of the material, but in rats it can increase the blood pressure and be lethal. And in other animal studies, it can cause acute severe liver toxicity, what we call cholestatic injury. It can cause damage to the heart muscle cells, cause some memory issues and cognitive impairment. If you've been taking it for a while and then decide to stop, you're going to have some withdrawal symptoms, but the withdrawal symptoms are going to be relatively mild and only last for about a week. Symptoms are typical of any withdrawal reaction: dry mouth, anxiety, depression, restlessness, and hostility, and sometimes pain in your muscles or your bones, and some jerky movements of your limbs. Sometimes causes sweats or tremors or panic or sometimes dizziness. Treatment for that's just watchful waiting, sometimes a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, aspirin or ibuprofen or naproxen. Maybe sometimes a person might need an anti-anxiety medicine or even rarely an antidepressant medicine. Symptoms, as I said, tend to be relatively short-lived. Overdose, you could overdose on the material. Could cause some liver toxicity, some seizures, respiratory depression at high doses, but it seems to be less harmful than either morphine or codeine. And some people, unfortunately, associated with coma or death, especially when it's combined with either alcohol or fentanyl. Can be treated with naloxone, the same thing we use to treat overdose of the opioids, can cause death. The number is actually disputed. It seems to be reported maybe 152 deaths, but the exact number, as I say, is in dispute depending on the reporting agency. Kratom's been suspected as a primary culprit in about 91 deaths. Likelihood of harm, well, it's increased when it's used in combination with other substances like fentanyl or alcohol or the benzodiazepines or cocaine, and you're not even sure what you're getting because it can be adulterated. So poison centers from 2001 to 2017 noted a 52-fold increase in the number of reported problems associated with the compound. That includes about 1,800 reports. That includes deaths. About 50% had to do with either hypertension, high blood pressure, or seizures. And 5 of the 7 exposed infants in utero, they actually had withdrawal symptoms. Now, about 25% of the reports to the poison control centers were mild. They didn't really have any significant problem. Moderate symptoms in about 40% of the people. And those people required some kind of medical treatment but didn't have any permanent damage. But about 7-8% of the people had major, potentially life-threatening signs or symptoms. And some of them had some residual disability, and the rest of the people were lost to follow-up. The pharmacology of the material seems to work within about 5 to 10 minutes of taking it. The duration of action is somewhere between about 2 and 5 hours. It interacts with the liver's metabolizing enzymes for different kinds of drugs. So it can alter the way your body handles a variety of either prescription or over-the-counter medicines. The effect of the drug, well, it's pretty much the same as morphine. Uses the same kind of receptors as morphine. The FDA used some 3D computer technology, and they found that 22 of the most prevalent compounds in Kratom, seem to share structural similarities with the controlled opioid substances like morphine. They bind to the same receptor as morphine. That's called the mu receptor. Seem to bind there, and strong as with opioids, actually also works on the kappa and the delta receptors. As I mentioned, works on the adrenergic and serotonin and dopamine pathways. It's not actually an opiate by itself. It's not derived from an opium poppy, but rather it's opioid. It's like an opium in the way it acts because it acts on the same receptor, but it acts in a different manner. In the last 10 years, Kratom's been available for sale in gas stations and tobacco shops and head shops and vaping lounges and juice bars. But most people buy it on the internet, but you don't know whether it's been adulterated or not. So for instance, there was a problem in Germany and Sweden where they were selling something known as enhanced Kratom. And those preparations had some caffeine and some synthetic tramadol in them. And then there was Kratom acetate. That didn't have any mitragynine in it. It's often fortified with a variety of other kind of substances or adulterated with other substances. Laboratory testing won't show up on routine laboratory testing. If necessary, if a person is suspected of having an overdose of the material, well, it could be detected on specific liquid chromatography with mass spectrometry. It's not currently listed as a controlled substance, but it's listed as a drug of concern. It's not FDA approved for any indication. The FDA has concern that it really is an opium analog. It works like opium, and they believe it contains a mind-altering substance. So since it works on the same receptor in the brain as opium, or the opioids, they're concerned because we're already in the middle of one opium or opioid epidemic. They're worried about perhaps another. So the FDA says that there's no reliable scientific evidence to support any of the claims of benefit of this material. There's no submission to the FDA at the present time to study the drug. There's no evidence it's safe, no evidence it's effective for any condition, and it's not approved for interstate commerce. So you can't send it from one state to another. It's not legally marketed in the United States as either a drug or a dietary supplement. It's unapproved. It's an unapproved drug. As of 2012, government banned its imports in 2014 as a dietary supplement or bulk ingredient. Actually, in September of 2014, marshals seized about 25,000 pounds of raw kratom in Van Nuys, California. In January 2016, they seized 90,000 bottles of a dietary supplement containing the kratom. That was in Illinois. So that was culminated by the FDA's and the DEA saying in August of 2016, what we're going to do is we have an intent to put Kratom's active material into Schedule 1. Schedule 1 is the same place where they have heroin and ecstasy. And they cited more than 600 calls to poison control centers between 2010 and 2015, and more than 10,000 deaths from the opioids, not from the Kratom, but from the opioids. But the DEA's intent was met with strong protests from those who use the material for chronic pain and for opioid and alcohol withdrawal. And then we had a lobbying effort. There's a Botanical Education Alliance that represents the industry, and the American Kratom Association that represents the consumers. It's up to a potential 5 million users at the present time. So because of the lobbying, 51 members of the House, 9 senators, they sent letters to the acting administrator of the DEA, and there was an online petition that had 140,000 signatures on it, sent it to the Obama White House, wanted to keep the material available. The DEA said they were still going forward, but in October of 2016, they withdrew the notice of the intent to continue the action, so they delayed the overview till December of 2016. But still to this day, there's been no real official action. Now, it's illegal in certain states. So, for instance, it's illegal to sell the material in Arkansas and Alabama and Indiana and Vermont and Wisconsin and Rhode Island and the U.S. Army. They say soldiers can't use it. In Utah, they were ready to ban Kratom, but they found a patron in a senator, a state senator. So in March of 2019, they enacted the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. That banned the sales of adulterated Kratom, adulterated with any other substance. They limited the amount of active compound that was able to be sold, and it required specific labeling of the Kratom-containing products. 12 other states are considering similar laws. The Ohio Board of Pharmacy, basically the same sort of thing happened when the state regulators were set to ban it in August of 2019. Then there was a delayed action after hundreds of people protested. Then there were 7,000 comments, public comments. So at the present time, they haven't done anything. Now the FDA believes that Kratom exposes users to addiction and abuse and dependence. The National Institute on Drug Abuse, the NIDA, they say it's an illegal substance, but it's easy to order on the internet. It's a controlled substance in at least 16 other countries. Can't buy it in Australia or New Zealand or Iceland or Denmark. Can't buy it in Poland or Sweden or Romania, Latvia, Lithuania. The United Kingdom prohibits the imports. In Canada, you can use it, but not for human use. You can use it as an incense. Interesting sidelight. In April of 2018, the FDA issued a mandatory recall of all products that contain powdered Kratom because we were in the midst of an outbreak of salmonella, a particularly bad outbreak that caused a lot of people to be hospitalized. Well, most of the drug companies, or most of the companies that were selling the Kratom, they accepted the FDA and they stopped selling it. But there was one company in Las Vegas, a chemical that manufactured and packaged the material. It was called Triangle Pharmaceuticals, and they actually didn't. They didn't heed the FDA warning. So that led to a mandatory recall of the substance. Now, interestingly, this is a tree that originally was grown in Thailand and areas of Southeast Asia. But in 1943, they made it illegal to plant the tree over there in Thailand. And that was because of rising prices of opium, when they were cutting down on the opium, caused a lot of people to turn to Kratom. But they relented in 1979, and they considered a Category 5 class of narcotics as of 1979, but then they finally took it off the restricted list in 2018. Then we have a significant number of youths in Thailand and in Malaysia who use a tea-based cocktail of the material. It has effects that are similar to alcohol. It's called 4X100. And the people, mostly the young people, take the kratom leaves and they put a little codeine in it or a little bit of Benadryl cough syrup, diphenhydramine. And they take a little bit of the soft drink, some Coca-Cola, and they put some ice cubes in there. Maybe they add a little anti-anxiety medicine or pain medicine. And they use that. And unfortunately, that's a significant problem, at least in the subculture right now over in Asia. So depending on who you believe, kratom's either a dangerous addictive drug that has no medical use, has the potential for severe side effects, and can cause overdose and death, or it's a safe product that's good for undertreated pain and opioid withdrawal. There's, unfortunately, at the present time, no controlled or reliable information on the product, on how it's grown, or the quality, or the labeling. So you have to be careful. We have a vocal community of supporters who have lots of testimonials, lots of anecdotal comments about how great the product is, but we don't have any controlled studies. And certainly we don't need another addictive opioid or addictive material that mimics the effect of the opioid while we're in our current battle against the substance. So that's kratom. It's popular, it's understudied, it's often adulterated with different material, has unknown effects of the marked product. We don't even know what the concentration is, don't know what chemicals are in it, don't know how it's been changed. There are a lot of don't knows about the material, and it interferes with your body's drug metabolizing enzyme. So it changes the way your body handles over-the-counter drugs and prescription drugs. So be very careful if you opt to use it, and use it the way you would use any other kind of medicine. Think if you really need it. Is it really going to help you? Is it really going to be something positive for you? Then at least right now, that's all we know about the product. Don't have any good, reliable information. And you don't even know if you're taking it, what's in the material you're consuming. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please tell a friend, maybe consider subscribing so you'll be updated as soon as we post new videos. Appreciate your interest. I'm Dr. Ken Landau.